we're going to take a look at your transactions or cashbook menu within Scribe. So clicking onto the transactions menu on the left-hand side, we've got payments and receipts. So literally just because it is council accounts, so we know that we separate everything into both your income and your expenditure. So therefore, as far as the cashbook is concerned, we mirror that by having a menu item, one for payments and one for receipts. They both work in exactly the same way. It's just one sits on the other side of the cashbook. So to add in a new payment, we've obviously got the payments list view that's displayed here already. So if you're just a new clerk to Scribe, you might already have some data on the system. Everything is always presented in this list view that we can see here. So when we want to add a new one, we can either click onto the Add button next to the payments title in the top left of the screen, or the more traditional way is using the Edit button in the right-hand corner and then adding a record. Scribe will automatically add the next voucher number. So here mine is number 29. And then we're going to start entering basic details. So we've got basic details here. Anything that's marked with an asterisk is a mandatory field. So the first one we've got is tender type. Excuse me. You can choose from here from online payment, direct debit, standing order, card and check, etc. We've got petty cash sitting there at the bottom. The only difference with petty cash is it is a tender type that's been preset by Scribe. You don't have to use this if you don't have petty cash, but you'll notice that by selecting that, we don't have the ability to select a bank. There is no bank statement required with the petty cash because obviously it comes in and out of a tin. So that's the only one where you'll see that will disappear. But other than that, any of the others that you select, you'll then be asked to select the bank that the transaction is related to. So I'm going to choose my current account here. Then you've got the ability to enter a date. It will default to today's date. You can obviously overkey that manually if you need to. If I want to put something in for yesterday, I can literally just overtype that with the 30th. There is, if you prefer, a full calendar option on the right-hand side. So if you prefer to use the mouse rather than the keyboard, you can then select the required date for your transaction. As far as the transaction date itself goes, this will either be the date of the actual transaction. So this might be you putting in just standing orders and direct debits or those payments that you've actually approved and are going through already. Or you might use your cashbook and you might post date some of these. So it could be, for example, the date of your next finance meeting. So if I've got one on the 15th of August, I can pop that in as the date for my next meeting. And then once I've added my transactions to Scribe, I can obviously use a list view of payments awaiting authorization. So I don't have to duplicate that work by creating a pre-approval payments list. Obviously, as I said, for your standing orders and direct debits, they're going to be going out at the date it happens. So you'll need to pop that through as the transaction date. So it can be either or one of those. And we'll take a little look later at updating those dates if needed be. If you are just putting them on for today's date and then approving them later, if you want to update the transaction date in bulk once they've been approved and key in that minute reference, we can look at how we do that. Then you get to enter a new description. So if we're going to be popping in here, clerk salary, we can obviously start typing something in. Once you start typing, if you're in a completely new system, it'll just be saying to you underneath, create new. I've already got one here for clerk salary, so I can simply just type on it. It will remember those, so it just again helps to speed up that data input for you. Then you need to select or search for your supplier, exactly the same as we did with the description. So you've got a plus button on the right-hand side here if it's a new supplier. So adding that in, if it's an organization such as Amazon or Viking for your stationery, you can pop that in the organization name. Obviously, for me, this is a clerk, so I could pop in the name, either the clerk if you don't want them to be named, or Sue Smith if you do. If it's an organisation and it's something that you're going to be claiming the VAT back on, there is obviously a box here for the VAT registration number. You don't have to key that in at the moment, because if you don't have that to hand, you always come back here later and enter in that VAT registration number at a later date. None of the other fields in here are mandatory. There's no asterisks here, so you don't have to key in all of the address details, etc. It's just a database for your suppliers and your other users on here, should you wish to keep it that way. Clicking on to save or cancel because I'm just going to select an existing one in here. So I can now come down and find my John Smith for my clerk. We've got a payment reference in the top right-hand corner. So if you've got a check or something, you can pop in a payment reference there with the number. Your invoice date, obviously, if you're claiming back that VAT, you'll need to type that in, and the invoice order number as well. If you are using sales invoices within Scribe, then those will be pre-filled for you automatically. So then we've done our setup. Here is where we allocate our payment to our budget. So we need first to choose the relevant cost center. Maybe it's under administration. There I've got my staff costs. So that's my cost code from there. The next thing you need to do is select your VAT type. So for clerk salary, this is going to be outside scope. I can then type in the net value and Scribe will know that there's no VAT applied to outside scope. So it's then calculating the VAT at a zero value to give me £120. Your VAT types, obviously for the standard ones, they're fairly obvious. So if you're calculating it at standard VAT, Scribe's going to take that net value of £120 and apply the 20% to calculate it to 24 and give you a total of 144. It will do the calculations backwards and forwards, so provided you've selected that VAT type of standard. If I type in here a total of 150, we can see that it's calculated the VAT at £25 to give me that net value of 125. Sometimes, obviously, when we're doing transactions, the VAT may be non-typical or non-standard. It might not be that everything has got VAT applied to it. So if that is the case, if you know that you've got a total of £150, but that only £10 of that is VAT, then you need to manually calculate what the net value would be and then overkey the VAT. So in that circumstance, I would say that my net value is £140. Scribe's obviously trying to calculate the 20% for me, but because it is only £10, I can just overkey the net value with £10. And then again, Scribe will still confirm that total of 150. So if you do have non-standard VAT, make sure you always work from the left to the right to confirm that those totals and net values are correct. Sometimes with sort of utility bills and things, we might find that we're paying standing orders or direct debits throughout the normal months where we're literally just paying a net value the whole time. So if that's the case, you'll obviously have your net value that you're going to be paying and you won't have any VAT at all. At the end of the year, they may then provide you with a VAT only invoice. So if you have got a VAT only invoice and the full value is that, then obviously your net value is going to be zero. So in this case, you've calculated your net value to be zero, and you can then overkey the VAT with £140 to give you that total again of £140. Your VAT types of standard and lower, you'll obviously find those on your invoices. The ones that tend to cause the most confusion are those that are exempt, those that are outside scope, and those that are zero, purely because the value of the VAT for them is all zero. Now, we have got a little handout on VAT guides. So the reason they're different, why do we have 3 different VAT types that all have a value of zero? Well, the reason is because HMRC have classified them as such. So they've given an exemption certificate for certain items, and they've also classified certain items as zero rated. We've got a list of them here. Zero rated, don't tend to see very often in council accounting. So you do sometimes see them with sort of water bills, but other than that, you're more likely to sort of see zero rated items in the supermarket rather than within council accounts. Exempt, you'll certainly see exempt items within council accounts. Certainly if you've got a cemetery, anything to do with funerals or burials or cremations, etc., and all of the management with that is exempt from VAT. It's got here as well, financial services, lease and rent payments is another big one. Same with insurance, postage stamps, member subscriptions, and most training costs as well. So they all have that VAT type of exempt. Everything else, and the ones that you'll be using most commonly, will be X outside scope. So I've got here bank interest, business rates, the big one, goods and services supplied by an unregistered supplier, your grants, your precept, your staff salary, so PAYE, national insurance contributions, etc. They are all X outside scope. Please don't worry if you've already been entering things as 0 and you think, oh gosh, now I need to enter everything as X outside scope. Just be aware, obviously, that these are the VAT types as set by HMRC, and now you're aware of them. Then in moving forward, try and use the correct ones as you go through. Just pop in another value there, so I've got that as X outside scope. You can then add an additional row if you've got another item to pop in. And here you've got the ability to then change your cost centers. So if you have got something else that you want to allocate to, you've got your staff costs, but if you've also got some expenses or something or other else in there, or your tax and national insurance for this one that wants to go through, then you can pop that in at the same time as well. As well as adding a row, you can copy a row. So that's literally just choosing the same cost center and cost code. If you have got something else that you want to pop in there, you can do that as well. If you've got too many, you've got the trash can here on the right-hand side where you can get rid of it. Powers to spend, if you're using those, you can type that in. There is a big long list there for you. Now, if you're obviously familiar with those and using them on a daily basis, you can just pop in the section number. So if you know that it's section 23, put the dot in, so you know that it's section 23, you can pop that in and then you can literally just select that one. So it just saves you from scrolling, just different ways again of using those powers to spend. You've also got here that tick for awaiting authorization. So I spoke about that payments for approval list view. So I'm going to pop a tick in this box to say that this payment is awaiting authorization. We'll have a little look in a minute at how we can run that report. You can, of course, add any further notes that you want to here, and you've got the ability to attach a PDF copy of the invoice or any other documentation that you want to for that transaction. You've got an add button at the bottom. You've also got an add and repeat. So if you're popping a lot of data in, sometimes it's useful to do add and repeat. It's now going to change my voucher from 29 to 30. So it's taken the next one, it's added one into the cash book. And then I can obviously just update this if I'm doing salary payments and I've already done my, oh, sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. If I've already done the one for John, I can take that away and then move on to my next number of staff and update the values accordingly. At the bottom, again, I've just got that add, which is like your save, which will take you back to your payments list view, and we can see those two items that I've just keyed in on here. So that's adding your payments and popping them in. As I said, receipts are exactly the same. They just sit the other side of the cash book. So if I come over to receipts and click on to edit and add a new record, then we can see the exact same basic details and everything that we saw on the previous screen. Obviously, this one doesn't have the awaiting authorization box because it's only payments that need to be authorized. You will notice that there is no delete button on Scribe. So up until the point in time, if you're VAT registered and you're making a VAT submission, your cash book is completely unlocked. So you can make any edits, amendments, or changes to any of your transactions that you need to do. So if, for example, my grass cutting one here, if I've come in and I've made a mistake, I can come back in and I can edit it. So if it's literally just that I've got an issue here with the date, I can obviously overkey that, or if it's something that I haven't done and I've made a mistake with the value, again, I can literally just update that here. It will update the transaction. I can save it at the bottom and it's updated that for me. Alternatively, I might have made an error where I've actually duplicated something. So this is where we don't have the delete button. If you have made a mistake and you popped in sort of like 7 payments and they should have been receipts, contact us at Scribe Support and we'll be able to delete the last 7 or the last 2 or the last 5 payments for you. What we can't do is we can't have gaps in the cash book. So if 27 is a complete error and we need to get rid of it, we can't do that because we would then have a gap in the audit trail. We can't have from 26 and a jump to 28. So what we recommend you do in those circumstances is to set the net value of the transaction to 0. So previously you just saw me go in via the date to edit this transaction. You can also use 3 vertical dots on the right hand side and edit the record. So here where I edit the payment, I'd recommend in the payment reference at the top, literally just pop the word in void or duplicate or something that tells you that this is a duplicate or void payment. Here is where we then set that net value to 0. It's then going to take any values out of the cash book so it's no longer relevant. I'm a little bit OCD, so I like to change my description as well. And I will put in there void as well. Sometimes that can be useful when you're running other reports to check that it's not something you just accidentally forgot to add a value to. It's purely that it was a genuine duplicate or a genuine error and you just needed to remove it from the cash book. By updating that and clicking on to save, we can then reconcile that through, but it's taken those values out, so it's completely removed that from the cash book. So that's adding payments, adding receipts, and voiding transactions.